Hi guys, this is Ifama Odolami from the Odolami Law Firm here in New Jersey. It's been a long time and gosh, the month of January was hectic. We were afflicted by COVID in my office and so it's been crazy. I was out all of last week working from home because my son had COVID too. So I had to quarantine from my office. But I am back and I'm ready for you guys. I have a really great topic. I cannot wait to share it. So I'm going to wait for people to come in and then we can get started. I'm really excited to give you this information. It's a new year and we're looking forward to winning more victories for you guys. So listen up and learn. So, my name is Ifeoma Odulami. For those that do not know me, I'm an immigration attorney in New Jersey. My law firm serves clients from all 50 states, and that is because immigration is federal law. So, it doesn't matter where you live. If it's a family based immigration, we're here to help you. Okay? So, if you're on the chat, you can sign in, tell me where you're calling from or where you're viewing from, and we can go from there. So, guys, I want to talk today about a really important topic. This is the mistakes you have to avoid making when you're filing your application. And you guys know that filing immigration applications is a legal process. It looks like, it's administrative because you're filling out paperwork, but trust me, it's a legal process and you want to make sure that you do it right the first time so that you don't get denied or delayed. And so I'm going to talk about 10 things that people do that will cause a delay or a denial. Okay. So the first thing is number one, prepare your petition correctly. Number one, prepare your petition correctly. Sign your documents, guys. Sign your documents and sign them with black ink. I know sometimes some offices don't make a big deal about whether or not it's blue or whatever, but the instructions say black. And I personally am too scared to use blue. So we use black ink, and I ask you to do the same. Use black ink to sign your petitions, right? And make sure that you're signing the right form for the right person, because in some petitions there may be different people required to file. For instance, if you're doing a marriage-based petition, the petitioner, who is the spouse, will sign certain documents like the I-130, and then the beneficiary will sign certain documents, the I-130A. So you want to make sure that you guys are signing the right documents. Make sure the petitioner is signing I-130 and the I-864, which is the affidavit of service, and that the beneficiary is signing the I-130A, the I-485765131. Okay? So you want to make sure you file the right documents. You want to make sure you sign it and you date it, because especially this time of the year when it's 2022, but some people are still signing 2021. I know I catch myself doing that sometimes. And believe it or not, I have heard that USCIS will reject a document because the person signed 2020 the wrong year. So you need to be careful with that. Okay. Then the second thing is submitting the correct fee. You have to submit the correct fee. So sometimes you may even pay, because sometimes what you're supposed to pay may be a little confusing, and you may actually even pay more than you're required to. And you would think that USCIS would be like, okay, we'll take the money. But no, if you pay more, if you pay less, they will reject it and return it to you. So you want to pay the right amount. And I I actually ask that you pay based on the form. Like if you're filing an I-130, I typically will use a separate check for the I-130, which is $535. And I will use a separate check for the adjustment of status, which is $1,225. And you want to make sure it's addressed to the right person. And this is the way you address it. U period S period Department of Homeland Security. Don't abbreviate, okay? U period S period Department of Homeland Security. That's who gets your check. And you should, in the memo column, you should put your name or a number if you have one, or and what the check is for. If it's an I-485, you want to put the I-485. It's an I-130, you want to put that. That doesn't really matter, but I think that it's really helpful. And also, when you're required to submit passport photos, at the back of the pictures, you should put your name. And if you have an A number, you should put that. And if you have, and put your date of birth. Now, this is not a make or break, but sometimes USCIS loses documents, especially passports. You want to help them to be able to put it, apply the passport to the right place. Okay. The next thing is provide the information they're asking you for. So in a lot of these documents, they'll ask you about, where you've lived for the past 5 years, where you've worked for the past 5 years. You want to make sure that you give them the right information. In fact, a few years ago during the last administration, not putting information in any of the boxes would cause your documents to be returned. So if a question didn't apply to you back then, you had to put N/A, otherwise it would be returned. I'm glad to tell you that doesn't happen anymore. There was actually a court case that ruled that we didn't have to put NA on portions of the forms that were not applicable. And some of it made no sense, because it was clear that if it was not applicable, because if they said, if you've been married, enter this, then you put it. But if you've checked off you've never been married, in your mind you're thinking, I don't need to put anything there because I've checked off single. But back then USCIS wanted you to put, basically don't leave any box unfilled. But that's not the case anymore. But you should answer the questions properly. If they're asking for where you've lived, from when to when, try to the best of your ability to give the right information, the most accurate information that you can recall. All right. Number 4 thing you should not do is mailing the form to the wrong address. So where you mail your form will depend on where you live, the form you're filing, and where you live and the form you're filing, right? So your best bet is to go to the USCIS website and find out where you're supposed to file those forms. Another thing is it changes sometimes. So maybe you might have filed the form somewhere at a different time. It might be a different time now. So you want to make sure that your forms are properly addressed to the right address. You want to make sure you're using the right forms, because the forms also are changed periodically. You don't want to use an outdated form, because they will return that back to you. Okay? So those are the things that will cause your case to be delayed. And really, USCIS cases are delayed enough that we don't need any more delays. So you want to be careful about that. Another thing that you need to do is make sure that the documents you send are translated if they're not in English. So, and I'm talking of legal documents such as your marriage certificate, if you're married, birth certificate, death certificate, divorce decrees. This kind of documents, if you have it in a language that is not English, must be translated to English. And you want to make sure the person who's translating it is certified to translate. They have to include a certification of translation that says that they are competent in English and whatever language that is, and they're able to translate from one language to the other, and they've done so to the best of their ability. Okay, I would just advise you to just get a certified translator, because some legal words may not translate properly in certain languages. So you want to make sure it's somebody who is competent and knows how to translate some of these words. Okay, so I have Thomas Ren Jimon. Hi, Thomas, sorry. So the other, let's see, I have talked about sending documents. So number 6, this is important. Number 6 is make sure that you send all the documents that you need for that particular filing. So if you're filing a marriage-based petition, you want to make sure you get the I-130, the I-130A, the I-485, the I-765. If you want a travel permit, I-131, I-864 for the petitioner, right? And if you're filing for a parent, there are different well, you don't have to file the I-130A. Another thing you need to do is you need to make sure that for the type of case you're filing, you want to make sure that you're including all the documents that are required. And some of those documents may not be obvious, but this is how to think. If it's a marriage-based petition, you must have your marriage license, right? If either of the parties have been divorced before, you must have a divorce decree. And the reason is because for you to get married in the United States, you have to show that you're available to be married, that if you were divorced before, you were properly divorced. So if you've been divorced, you or either the petitioner or the beneficiary, you must have your divorce decrees, right? Because if you don't, that's a big problem, right? Because you're not showing that you were, you're available as a single person to get married again. United States does not, polygamy is against the law in the United States, right? And so you want to make sure you have that information. Another thing you need to make sure you have is you want to make sure you have the documents that USCIS wants. If you go to travel.state.gov, they will tell you the documents that are required based on your state or your country. Like if, for instance, in Nigeria, if you're divorced, they need a decree nisi and a decree absolute, right? If you are married in customary court in Nigeria, you don't need a decree nisi or decree absolute. You only need that if you were married at a registry, or you were married in church and the church registered it. So there are different rules for the documents you're required to produce depending on the country you're from. USCIS will tell you what they're looking for. All right. So number 7. Actually, let me go back to number 6. The forms that are required. If you're filing for your child, you want to have the birth certificate showing that you're the parent and that the child is, basically establishing the relationship. So number 7, another mistake that people make, which has led to their cases being denied, is not notifying USCIS when they move. They're required by law to notify USCIS when they move, when you change address. But there's actually a practical reason that you want to let USCIS know where you are when you're filing your application. If USCIS requires more documents from you, they'll send you something called an RFA, request for evidence. Now, if they don't have a current address and they send it to an old address, you're not going to get it. And if you don't get it, you have a certain amount of time to respond to that RFE, which if you don't respond, the case will be dismissed. So, and when the case is dismissed, you have to start all over again. And so that delays your case. So it's really important that when you change addresses, you and your petitioner, both of you, need to let the beneficiary and the petitioner need to let USCIS know. So don't file a loan for the beneficiary, assuming that because you're the intending immigrant, they only need to know your change of address. Your spouse, too, who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder, has to give a change of address, because typically when USCIS is setting certain documents, they might address it only to the petitioner. All right. So let's go to the next mistake you want to be aware of that you should not make. Put your name correctly on your application. Now, this sounds like really simple, but a lot of us have long names, especially, Nigerian names, African names. You have long names and people call you a short form of it. Like your name may be Oluwaseyi, but you go by Sheyi. If you're filling out the forms, please put your government name, the name on your passport, the name on your birth certificate. The forms allow you to give other names you've been known as, your nicknames, but you want to make sure that you put the right name to avoid confusion, okay? So let's go to the next one. Number 9. Number 9 is a biggie, right? It's when you don't recognize the importance of a prior criminal case. Some people don't put that information in there because they think, oh, it was dismissed. The charges were dismissed, or they may not have realized that it was important. Now, depending on the type of application you're seeking, This information is very important, and I have just one answer. If you have any prior infraction with the law, get an attorney. Do not attempt to file your petition yourself, because there's certain things that are not criminal, but USCIS considers them crimes of moral turpitude, or certain things that may be like maybe a DUI, which may not be criminal, but that's a problem in some states. So you want to make sure that if you had any prior infraction with the law, even if it's civil, like people who are involved in DCPP cases, right, where there might be some municipal charge levied that they may have pled to, that might come up to be a problem. So the moral of this is, regardless of whether it's been dismissed, if you've had any infraction, any legal infraction, call an attorney and talk, have a proper consultation so that the attorney can let you know how to proceed with your case. Number 10, and this is a biggie because most people are denied because of this, and this denial can affect your future applications. Not preparing for the interview, especially with marriage cases. There are many interviews you might go for when you're applying for a green card. It could be it could be based on your family, or if maybe it's a naturalization interview, maybe it's not a green card interview. But you want to be prepared. If it's a naturalization interview, you want to make sure you take all the documents required. You want to make sure that you have your taxes, you're filing your taxes, or at least even if you owe the government some money, you're in some kind of agreement with to pay off. You want to make sure that you prepare for the civics test, if the English and civics test, if you're not exempt. You have to prepare for your interview. Now, if it's a marriage-based interview, there's a whole lot of preparation that must go on, and I've talked about that in my prior videos. So you want to make sure that you review all the applications that you submitted. If there's any change since you filed the application, you want to be able to bring it up at the interview to update your application, right? So that they don't think you're being deceitful in not giving that information. If it's a marriage interview, you also want to make sure that you take all the documents that you're required to take. Your proof of a bona fide marriage, your identification documents, your passports, the originals of your passports, your birth certificates, and all that information, okay? You want to go prepared. You want to have prepared with your spouse, prepared for the interview, gone over questions, things, the kind of questions that you're going to be asked at the interview. So those are that's the 10 immigration mistakes that I have for you guys that you need to review to make sure you're not making them, so that your case is not delayed or denied. So let me go to the questions I have here. I have Thomas, who doesn't ask a question. Thomas, hello. Thank you for showing up. And now I have Chowdhury. Chowdhury says, I want to ask about family-based F1 visa. Please tell me my dad applied my visa in 2016. I'm married, over 21. So Chowdhury, I'm not really sure what you're asking, because the F1 is that I think I see what you're saying. Your father applied for you based on the F1. He's a U.S. citizen applying for a child who's over a son or daughter who's over the age of 21, and he applied in 2016. And I think what you're asking is you haven't heard anything because your priority date has not been reached. That's the reason you haven't heard anything. So unfortunately, these cases are taking a little while. And when your priority date is reached, the NVC will contact you and contact your father, and you guys can go to the next stage. But there's really nothing you can do about, getting to the priority date. You just have to stay on the line like everybody else. That's really it. Unless there's some emergency, but really, you just have to wait for your priority date to be reached, because there's a line. there. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all for today. So I will come back again and we can do some more live. If you have any questions that you want me to answer, feel free to go to my website, send the question in. I will try to address those questions when I do my lives. Sometimes it would even help me to prepare for the topics. All right. All right. Take care, all. Have a great day.